Hello, everyone, and welcome to an extraordinarily stuffy installment of Club Moffat Talks. I am your host, digital services librarian and allergy victim, Chris DiPanetta.
And I am Joseph McNeely, instruction librarian.
I'm Ryan Sanderson. I'm the Associate University Librarian for Public Services here at Moffat Library. And today we're going to talk about adaptations again, I believe.
So, have
Yep.
you noticed in our recording right now, we're only us three librarians. We're going to have a little bit more of a laid back episode for you today, and we're just going to be talking. And as Ryan said, we're actually going to have a topic for today, and that is adaptations, different types of adaptations, and specifically what we view as strong adaptations or what makes a strong adaptation. Before we get to that, does anyone want to talk about what they've been doing lately, or do you want to jump straight into it?
I'll say a thing. Um, I've been contemplating the lessons learned from September 2001. Specifically,
What happened then?
almost nothing. Uh, some a small number of radicals who claimed to represent a larger number of people attacked the United States and caused some damage and loss of life. And that is a thing that happened in September of 2001. And it happens at other times, even recently. But an important lesson from September of 2001, from a little later in the month, toward the end of September, the first broadcast of Saturday Night Live after that event was so crucial to the growth of the United States. I don't know that it can properly be canonized in any other way than talking about just an important historical event because actors, comedians got together with politicians and first responders and said, even in the face of this tragedy, we're going to tell jokes and we're going to laugh. Um, I think that, Chris, I had a conversation with you somewhat recently about remembering to live, that no matter what's going on, we
Yeah.
need to remember that hope still exists, joy still exists, love still exists. And I feel like that's an important thing to be remembering.
If you also want to see something very hopeful from that time, if you haven't seen Jon Stewart's response, I think the night of September 11th on The Daily Show, that one's, if it's archived anywhere, go look at it. It's very moving.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're not dead until the last person stops talking about you. I think that was in One Piece, actually.
But also true.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Um, yeah. Uh, we could talk about other things, but then we're going to start talking about things that we've been told we shouldn't.
Oh,
So let's yeah, I mean,
well, you want me to tell my little story about that particular date?
sure.
Sure.
What's the opposite of serendipity?
Um,
Random.
Well,
rolling
no,
rolling a
where
one
something
on
really, really
everything. I don't
bad
know.
comes together to happen
Okay.
for you that is completely uncalled for. At the time, I had been running a tabletop RPG for a number of years, and it was an action based on action films, basically of the 1970s. And for that particular evening, I took some inspiration from movies like Escape from New York, which came out in the 70s, as well as the novel The Running Man, which was written by Stephen King back in the 70s. And I decided that evening I was going to have a plane crash into the uh, the state building of this little city that I was in, and trigger a civil war. And I basically everyone showed up at my house, and I said, "I'm not running anything tonight. I am not. Here is what I was planning on doing. I don't know why it happened this way, but this is what I was planning on doing tonight. I will play anything you want, but I'm never playing this campaign ever again, and I'm never going to have you guys. I don't want to play action heroes versus terrorist games anymore. I want to do something else." So we talked about what direction we can go in, and they all decided it was probably a good idea for that evening for their mental health and for my mental health. But that was one of the most weirdest anti-serendipity moments of my life.
We had puppies born that day. I was so excited to go home and play with puppies and not think about anything else.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Uh, do you want to talk about anything that you're reading or watching currently before we talk about various adaptations?
We've been watching a lot of HBO stuff. The Righteous Gemstones just ended. If anyone is unfamiliar with that, it's a star-studded um, program about a an extraordinarily corrupt uh, mega church family.
Hmm.
Uh, Stars John Goodman, Walton Goggins, Danny McBride. I never remember the woman's name, but she was on a couple other shows. It's by the showrunner behind Eastbound and Down and a shorter lived show called Vice Principals, which is also really incredible. Um, that just ended maybe last week or 2 weeks ago. Um, I'm not watching The Last of Us season two. I tried to play the game it was based on, and it was really, really not good. So I'm really not interested in where that's going. The Rehearsal season two just started. Joe, that was the one that I was telling you and
Yeah.
Amanda about in the break room. And it's somehow gotten even more off the rails. So I'm very happy that that's currently airing. Yeah, you're gonna hear a bunch of nasty sounds coming from me today. So yeah, not a whole lot, just trying to keep my mental health um not deteriorated with kids. Both of my kids are toddlers now and they're both insane. So I go home, they jump all over me. Actually, my glasses, I don't know if you can see it on the camera right here, but my 3-year-old fell directly on my head with her full
Oh,
body weight, and I heard something in my glasses crack, and I thought it was just the lenses getting out of place. But then I was adjusting them today, and I noticed that there was just that crack in the corner. So yeah, fun stuff. Can't wait to go to go to the eye doctor. Apparently, in like the next 3 months.
yeah.
Anyone else?
Uh, I last weekend, not like yesterday, but a week ago weekend, had the opportunity to go to the Scarborough Fair Renaissance Festival, which is still continuing. It goes through the end of May. Um, if you have the opportunity and funds to do so, I highly recommend going there. It's just a lot of fun. Um, and also that weekend, we went and saw the Marvel Thunderbolts movie, which I really enjoyed overall. I thought it was good. Um, we're reading the Witcher series and watching old TV series. Um, I found an old sort of cottage core British mystery series that I'm getting a kick out of called Agatha Raisin, which is apparently based on a series of books by MC Beaton, but I cannot speak to them as being good or bad adaptations because I haven't ever read those books. But yeah,
Well, as you guys know, I've been mostly dealing with family problems this week. My elderly parents are at the point where they need assisted living, basically, and my father has been staying with me as my mom is in a physical rehab center for hurting her back. And the sad thing today is, or this week that happened to me is I checked out a book for my father, and he goes, "Is this a good book?" And I go, "Well, according to you, it's your favorite book." And he didn't remember the book at all or the author.
yeah,
But the good news is he's really enjoying it.
Well, that's
yeah, yeah.
good news.
That is good news.
Well,
And speaking of books,
Yes,
our topic today was adaptations. I think specifically we're going to talk about film adaptations. And
yes,
we're going to talk about film adaptations that are better than the book, or at least try to.
yep.
so but what the one thing that when we talked about this, when we talked about using this as our topic, the point that I said I wanted to really make is to talk about what makes a good adaptation. Like, what is it that makes something noteworthy as an adaptation of something else?
And we've talked about this before in depth on one of the episodes, I believe. And I think the consensus, at least the consensus I came to, is that it maintains the tone of the original. And sometimes you have to make major changes to the story in order to do something like that. But I think if it elicits the same emotions the movie does that the book does, I think that's a sign of a good adaptation, a good film adaptation. It doesn't, sometimes you have to change it dramatically to do something like that, and sometimes you don't. And it takes a good filmmaker who knows how to elicit certain emotions on how to change things up and adapt things to try to elicit those sort of responses in the audience that the book hopefully triggers in the audience as well. Or at least yeah, it tries to trigger in the audience.
I think that an important distinction with that is looking at an adaptation of a good book, because then you do want it, the adaptation, to have the similar qualities, to have the things that you liked about the book in the adaptation. But one of the things that I've been looking at when I'm looking at movie adaptations that are better than the book is that some it's because the movie is fixing problems with the book, problems of tone or pacing or an overabundance of characters. All of those are problems that books sometimes have because they're going into so much depth. Um, and and often the movie version will condense those things, consolidate them to give you a more focused, more streamlined story.
One of the things I did today is I've actually looked up what the internet says is movies which are better than the book. And some of them I agree with them strongly because some there have been really good movies made from pretty bad books. But I'm also finding a lot of people just like certain movies better than the books. Not necessarily because the books are bad, but my guess is just because it something about the movies they felt stirred something in them that the books didn't.
Mm.
And I'm seeing stuff like Lord of the Rings, which I disagree with because the books are different. They're different than the movies are. I can understand why people would enjoy the movies better, but there are also people who just absolutely love the books and don't really like Peter Jackson's movie. I'm seeing things like American Psycho, Silence of the Lambs, Psycho, Blade Runner, and I understand why certain people would view those movies as better, but I don't necessarily mean that think that those books are bad. It's probably that the movies are have been adapted to more of a general audience type of thing and don't go in depth as much as some things. But I think one person put Casino Royale, which I love the movie Casino Royale, but I also love the book Casino Royale as well. I think they're good in different ways. A lot of these they're on here. And it's not necessarily that the movie's better than the book. It's that the movie is different enough from the book that it can appeal to a different range of people than the book did. Usually, very good movies will appeal to a broader audience, maybe than the book does, which I guess fits the definition. But um, we've talked about this before in the past, and I always put up three particular books that I hated. I hated the books, and I think the movies are masterpieces. And I see them also on in the internet as well. So I'm like, yay! People agree with me. And that's Jaws, The Godfather, and Ben-Hur. I think the movies are some of the best movies ever done, and I think the books are some of the worst books ever done. Maybe not the worst books ever done, but they're certainly not good books. Let me put it that way. I think Jurassic Park's a good book. I think American Psycho's a good book. I think Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep is a good book. I think Rita Hayworth and The Shawshank Redemption is a good short story. I love The Lord of the Rings. I also love The Body, which created Stand By Me. And I think Psycho's okay. It's not great, but Psycho's okay. So I disagree a lot with these people. Well, maybe not disagree is too strong a word because I recognize the movies may be better than the books in these cases, but these aren't necessarily bad books or short stories to begin with. That's not true for Jaws. It's not true for Godfather. It's not true for Ben-Hur. Those are definitely books that I really didn't like reading. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the bigger point here is that we're talking about two different things. Like there could be adaptations that are better than their books. There can be good adaptations. Those don't have to necessarily be like within the same wavelength because like you said, there are good adaptations of good works, but like if something is better than its source material, then there is obviously something to improve upon about that source material. Now, I'm going to say something that people will not like. I don't love the Jurassic Park novel.
Hmm. Okay.
Um, it's already very short compared to like just not other types of science fiction, but also other Michael Crichton books. And a short length for a sci-fi novel can kind of hinder it because you want to take some time to talk about the science of the science fiction. And Jurassic Park doesn't really do that. It focuses a lot on the characters, which is fine. I mean, a story is about its characters first and foremost, but um, Jurassic Park really leans into its characters while it has a really interesting background of like speculative fiction behind it. And that's something the movie does really, really well is that it demonstrates its its science fiction. Um, but beyond that, the ending of the Jurassic Park book is terrible. Have either of you read like
Mhm.
lately read Jurassic Park?
Not lately. I read it when it first came out, what,
Um,
25 years ago, 30 years ago?
it's like Alan Grant starts like fighting the velociraptors at the end. Like he injects poison into like an egg and like rolls it like a grenade to to fight them or something.
Uh-huh.
And the one of the best moments of the movie, the T-Rex coming in and just annihilating the velociraptors, it's an accident within within the thing because it's just a big animal hunting other dangerous animals. That doesn't happen at all in the book, from what I recall. They just escape the island, and Ian Malcolm doesn't escape with them. Arguably the best character in the movie. He is just killed in the books, like off screen. It's a lot of stuff that I feel probably Spielberg read that book and said, "This I can fix this. I can do something much better than this." Um, I know, I mean, obviously a lot of people like Jurassic Park, and I would like Jurassic Park if not for the ending, I think, or the last little section of the book. But the movie is I would say inarguably better than uh better than the book. And a big part of that is because of how it pioneered computer graphics and film. It's a CGI masterpiece. That movie doesn't look like it's aged a day. Uh,
Well, I think the purpose was different though too. That's the thing is Michael Crichton. like most of his novels, was writing a let's be careful story. He was basically talking about the whole his whole point
Sure.
is just because you can doesn't mean you should. That was really his point of writing that novel. And I think he did a good job on that. Spielberg was trying to entertain, and I don't think Crichton was necessarily trying to entertain with his book. He was trying to make people think about this new form of genetic engineering that was starting to take off at the time, is what I think he was trying to do. So I would say, I mean, I agree with you. I agree with I agree that the book is strong. I mean, the movie is much stronger than the book is. But I would make the argument that, unlike some of his other novels, I don't think his primary purpose was to entertain people with that particular novel.
Yeah. I
I,
feel like,
I think that's probably fair, and also there's a graphic within the book that I think also demonstrates that, where chaos theory is a major part of the story, and it's actually shown as part of the chapters, where each chapter will have like a dot or like a hexagon or something, and as the novel goes along, it starts to spread out, and it starts spreading out in like random variations and random patterns, and it's like it's a subtle thing, but I think it also demonstrates the themes of it as well. But you can have a cautionary tale like that and still make it. I mean, like I said, it's fine up until the ending, and
I
that's the
gotcha.
point where I'm like, okay, judging these two on like their own merits or something, this is the point where I'm not entertained, and I'm also kind of annoyed and bored with the ending of Jurassic Park. Whereas with the movie, it's just like it ratchets up to a natural conclusion.
Joe, you had something you wanted to talk about.
oh, well, I have titles that I want to talk about. I was going to say that I I don't agree with Chris's opinion about Jurassic Park, but I understand what he's saying, and I get how you feel about it, Chris. I don't feel the same way, but I understand what you're saying about it. I do feel like most all of Crichton's books are cautionary tales, and that they're not necessarily designed to be. I mean, like we talk about popcorn movies. Well, Crichton doesn't write popcorn books,
Yeah.
you know. He writes stuff to make you think about it. Um, but uh, but no, I understand what you're saying about the movie was more enjoyable, that it was, and I get that. That makes sense to me. Um, no, some titles that I wanted to talk about where the movie was better than the source material. I feel like basically any movie version of a Tom Clancy book is better than the book. He has a tendency to get really bogged down in details. The stories will be very long, very drawn out. You'll have a protagonist that doesn't show up until halfway through the book. Um, and that's not particularly enjoyable. And I do feel like the movie versions of his stories consolidate that and bring it together and give you a more focused storyline. Um, Another one for me is the is Blood and Chocolate, which I believe is a young reader book about werewolves. But the movie version is just better. The storyline is more engaging and makes more sense. The main character is actually stronger in the movie version than she is in the book. She's kind of a more submissive, more weak-willed person in the book, which just isn't a great feature for a heroine, you know? Um, so yeah, I wanted to say both of those. Oh, and then of course, any film version of The Man in the Iron Mask is
Hmm.
better than the source material.
For some reason, I thought Blood and Chocolate was also. I thought that was the basis for True Blood for some reason.
No,
Uh,
no, that's no,
so
that completely
I was
different
totally off base on that
universes.
one.
Yeah, different universes.
I'll say this about Tom Clancy. I think Tom Clancy would make the argument that he doesn't really have a single protagonist. I think he like I mean he does, but I think he prefers writing books from multiple people's perspective. I'm thinking
Right.
of some of his other books like Red Storm and this was it the Sum of All I forget which one it was, but he's not unusual for him to skip first person perspectives throughout his
Mhm.
book for different protagonists.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I agree with you, but again, I would say that wasn't again his purpose isn't necessarily to write a a linear type story. A lot of the time, he's trying to highlight real life geopolitical situations in the world, I think.
Yeah.
I
I just
stopped reading him when he started going off the deep end as far as his far right ideology, but yeah.
mhm. Yeah.
Um,
It's just interesting to me because I mean, I feel like that there are other authors who play in a similar sandbox, but create more entertaining, more intriguing storylines.
I think the reason he took off like he did, I'm not sure about this, is because his stuff was much more rooted in actual state-of-the-art technology of the time, I think is the real reason he took off like he did. A
Okay.
lot of his stuff was based on speculation that was being done by government think tanks about
Mhm.
what technology is out there. I know that when I read, oh, what was it? I think it was his second book, Patriot Act. They actually mentioned the land radar system my dad helped develop for the Air Force, and I
Uh,
was like, oh my God, they mentioned the lantern system. I was like, that's a real. I mean, it was. He goes on to an entire, like page and a half describing this high tech science fiction like radar, which was a real thing that actually that a lot of people didn't know about. But again, apparently he had so I think part of the reason he was so popular is that military people and people in politics would read his stuff and go, "Oh, this guy knows what he's talking about," as opposed to a lot of the other writers where it's like, "Oh, this is just a bunch of BS. This isn't." So I think it's that plausibility that I think that really made him take off. Again, that's just my speculation to it. I know that I remember when stuff like Hunt for October and Red Storm and Patriot Games first came out, everyone was commenting on how insightful those works were to what was really going on with the IRA, with the Cold War and things of that nature. So again, I think it's a type of thing where people who read the books, and the example we've given so far, are looking for very specific sorts of things. And where people go to see the movies, it's more of a general, as you say, popcorn movie, the type
right.
of thing where mom, dad, the kids, and grandpa and grandma can all enjoy the film type of thing. I think those are the ones, and that requires a different set of skills and a different way of presenting the story and stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
um, for instance, I also mentioned "Do Androids Dream Electric Sheep?" That's one of the most philosophical novels by Philip K. Dick. It's incredibly a major aspect of that is religion and morality, which a lot of people don't understand, and none of that appears in the film whatsoever of Blade Runner whatsoever. But yeah, Blade Runner is a better film because it's much more interesting than Philip K. Dick's in-depth philosophy of religion and morality. But for those of you who are probably religious or philosophy majors, they're going to go, "What are you talking about? The book is so much better than the movie."
Sure.
So I think a lot of times when we're talking about films that are better adaptations or um, better adaptations of the book, I think it's because they've broadened it up and made it more accessible to a lot of people. Rather than just the more narrow fans of the books in some places. Um, yeah. Anyway, I'm arguing for books that are on the list that I'm like, yeah, the movie's better, but there are some people who like the books better.
Well,
Um,
yeah.
You
Um,
know who thinks that a book is better than the movie who's wrong about it? Stephen King with his own novel, The Shining, compared to the Kubrick horror masterpiece with
he
Jack
has
Nicholson, The
said in
Shining.
later years that he appreciates what Kubrick was going for, but he would like to have seen something that addressed alcoholism, which was the major aspect that he was trying to talk about in the book.
I think the fact that it is supposed to be his own like catharsis over issues with alcoholism that I'm not going to say that he's wrong for this, but it marred his perception over that particular story.
I will say
Where at the end
this,
of the day,
it's very unusual for a movie to be more anticlimactic than a Stephen King book. And that book is the perfect example where the ending is far more anticlimactic than the actual story is, which is weird because Stephen King is the king of anticlimactic endings to his books.
I think the two endings could have been merged together to make something really special. But
And I think they did
I,
that with, what was it, Doctor Sleep?
oh really? Okay,
Yeah.
I haven't seen that, and I definitely haven't read it. But I really liked the way the book ends with him like tearing his face off. Like I
Oh,
thought
yeah.
that was a
Unmask,
really like
unmask, unmask. Yeah.
yeah, unmasked. That's what it was. Yeah, it
Oh,
really
oh, oh, it's the best part of the entire book. It is this creepiest thing where basically says you're not really my father, and then the
it,
spirits that are possessing his basically dead father by that point
yeah.
destroy their own face to prove their point that they are not his father anymore.
He's been corrupted and possessed by something outside of his control, which is symbolic of the alcoholism and the abuse that he gives to his family. Like I really like that ending. But at the same time, I also really like the visual um of Jack Torrance being so lost inside of his own demons and his
Yeah.
own like the possession that's not just coming from the hotel but also from himself that literally has him lost inside of a maze that kills him. Like the maze on its own is a great metaphor for exactly what he's going through in that movie. And it's also something that works best in a visual medium like film because you can see you can see the outline, you can see the shape of the maze, and you can really get an idea for it. And it serves as its own like visual representation of this concept. Um, but the rest of The Shining, though, like
Oh
it
yeah.
has a
The
bunch of
tone of
Stephen
it
King
is
stuff
is
in it that I don't like the hedge demons. I'll always come back to the hedge
yeah.
demons. And anytime anyone says the book is comparable to the movie, I say the hedge demon book is not better than a Stanley Kubrick psychological horror. No, you're wrong about that. I'll argue with that until the end of my days because that was the point where I turned on the book.
Yeah, Stephen King has a bad habit of getting a silly idea in his head and putting it on paper and sticking
And
with it.
no one will edit him. No one will edit Stephen King.
I will speak for a person who used to be a big Stephen King fan. I am talking about my father, who now has dementia and doesn't remember Stephen King. But his problem with the film was always the fact that the book is very much about a good man slowly deteriorating into a monster, is what the book is about. And he said the movie is basically is Jack Torrance is the actor. Oh God, my brain's not working.
Jack Nicholson.
Jack Nicholson. He starts off being Jack Nicholson, and he's Jack Nicholson through the entire movie. And at the end, he's still Jack Nicholson. My dad
That's
goes, it would have been better with a different actor who could slowly degrade, but he said the whole time all I saw was Jack Nicholson. And he seemed creepy at the beginning and he seems creepy at the end, is what my dad
that
said.
is something that I do like about psychological horror, though, where this character is like one or two steps away from completely breaking from reality and staying at so
Overlook, yeah.
the Overlook, with its ghosts and with its like isolation and stuff. It doesn't really matter if it is the literal ghost or if it's whatever is going on in his head. Something makes him break, and it's all rooted kind of in his struggle with his writer's block. That's the kind of thing that like as a character story, I think that makes it very interesting because then you have a lot of questions as to what's metaphor, what's strictly like what's literally happening in the story, what's just imagery for something that is there to make you think and to strike you as something that's happening underneath the surface of the story. Um, Plus, I mean, think of how much people have gotten out of that film since then. Like there is a non 0% chance that the moon landing theory is actually real and hidden within that film.
There's one thing that I do have a complaint about the film though, and that's the fact that Kubrick did cut out a lot of the scenes that explain who the ghosts are. I think a little bit more of that in the film would help because there's a lot of scenes where people, I've even seen the reactions online. People are like, "What the hell was that? I just saw that scene. What does that mean? I don't understand. That was just a random, bizarre scene I saw." When if you read the books, you realize that all the scenes that are presented in the film have meaning behind them. They're all various ghosts who have died in the hotel over the years, and they all have their own backstories. I think a little bit more of that would have been interesting in the film, just to explain away some of the creepiness. I've seen a lot of people where certain scenes like where the guy's in the tuxedo with a guy dressed like a dog and that breaks their suspension of disbelief at that point. They're like, "What the hell was that? What was that? What?"
Well, the guy in the dog outfit was from one of the parties that they held.
I know, but it's
Yeah.
not explained in the movie at all. It's just
Yeah,
a
that's one
scene
of those things that
somewhere.
like if you're gonna watch a movie like that, you need to maybe put on your grown-up hat and actually like think about what you're watching and not
Mhm.
just expect the thing to be like, oh, by the way, he's dressed up like a dog because they were at a ball party and like they just kind of went off to another room. Like, think about it. Look at what you're looking at and think, why is it like this? Oh, there's a reason behind it.
Yeah, but the idea is it's all these basically these evil people, which you realize the reason he's dressed up like a dog is that's his boss, who basically is degrading him at this
Yeah,
party, both
but
in various
that's a
different
critical
manners,
thinking kind of
basically. Yeah.
like read the imagery more than just expecting the movie to tell you about it. But I think can we both agree that the TV adaptation was god awful?
Yeah, I'll
That's
agree with that. I mean,
that's what happens when you put a Stephen King thing literally on film, is you get the TV adaptation of The Shining. You don't need to watch that. Just read the book or watch an adaptation.
now I think he has done some very good TV adaptations. I think Storm of the Century is brilliant, and that's all Stephen King as well. But I will agree with The Shining.
Yeah.
So, my family was talking about this topic of movies that are better than the book, and they brought up some titles. A couple of these I haven't read, and then a couple of them I have. They're talking about the kind of Irish village story, Circle of Friends. Minnie Driver did the movie. It's like Maeve Binchy did the book. Um, the book has that kind of Tom Clancy thing where every person that lives in the village is introduced and is a character in the story in the book. Everyone. And that's just bogging down the story, you know? They mentioned the Forrest Gump book
That's
is not
mentioned
as
online
good
as
as the
well. Yeah,
movie. Uh,
never
the
read the book.
he's he's not likable. He's awful in the book.
Can you
So
imagine though if we got Forrest Gump 2 with Tom Hanks and it had him going into space with the monkey friend? Like that would have destroyed the first film's legacy forever.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong. I've never read the book, but the book is supposed to be a satire of American
I
society and culture.
I
And
guess that's
Forrest
the
Gump is not supposed to be a good example of Americans. He's supposed to be a terrible example of Americans, if I
well,
believe.
perhaps an accurate example.
Mhm.
Um, this is a book that I have not read, but Athena was talking about Shining Through. The movie version is like Michael Douglas and Melanie Griffith, I believe. Um, but the movie is better because in the book, the female main character has two different love interests. One is handsome, but is a terrible person, and the other is unattractive, but a really good guy. And in the movie, they took those two characters and gave you the good looking good guy, which was, much more palatable as a historic romance. And then the other one that they mentioned was Neil Gaiman's Stardust, and with the movie being better than the source material. Um, the source material's less fun. It's a darker tone. There are no gay pirates. And and the movie's just a whole lot more fun.
I'll throw a second one out there, and that's Hannibal, the sequel to Silence of the Lambs. The author, Thomas Harris, I think was just trolling people when he wrote the book because I think he was really pissed off that Hannibal Lecter took off as a major character and he had to write more novels about this serial killer that everyone seems to like. Because let me just say, the book was so bad that um, Jodie Foster refused to come back and do the sequel because she had read the book and goes, "Oh my God, I don't want to be involved. I don't
I
want this man to get any money whatsoever
I
based
thought she
on."
said she didn't want her daughter to see that she was in a movie that was that
That's a
violent.
possibility too, but I'm just saying, I have also heard that she just read the novel and she
Uh,
was like, "No, I'm not going to do it
I
because of
I
this novel." At
I
least
think
I've
you're onto
heard that
something
behind
there
the
because
scenes.
that's an author who's not written anything. That's someone who doesn't like writing. He wrote something called Black Sunday in 1975, then Red Dragon, which
Red
that's
Dragon's a very good novel, by the way.
yeah,
Yeah.
pre Hannibal. And Silence of the Lambs almost a decade later, Hannibal more than a decade later, and Hannibal Rising, which that movie is
Hannibal and Hannibal
unwatchable.
Rising gets more and more absurd.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
can only think it's because the author actually hates the audience.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah. No,
That's
I
like I said, that's someone who doesn't want to write, but is getting a big paycheck every time he does. Um, but yeah, that's
I
one
mean,
that
any
I haven't
novel that
read Silence
ends
of the
with
Lambs,
a
but
serial killer as a young man running around with a trench in a trench coat with a katana, that's an author who's making fun of his audience. I mean, I'm sorry,
yeah,
but it is.
yeah, that's someone who hates their work.
I
Um,
yeah.
Now, Joe, you mentioned one that I kind of wanted that I want to talk about a little bit because there's something there's a trend coming up, and I guess it's been a thing before, like it the book It from Stephen King. We talked about King already. We talk about King a lot in this podcast for some reason. Um, Everyone talks about the Tim Curry It. That that's not technically a movie though. That's a two-part TV movie. The method of which people would watch that movie before would be like a TV program. They would tune in to watch it on their television. I think these days, a lot of studios and a lot of like broadcast stations, whatever. Words are not happening right now because my brain is half snot. Um, what I'm trying to say is that book adaptations are really taking off as TV shows now
Yeah.
because TV is a much more palatable medium. I think right now, especially because people don't want to go to the theater, but also because you don't have to cut as much. And TV is looking for, or TV executives are looking for these things that don't require as much work with like guessing what audiences are going to really respond to. These days, if it's like, okay, well, there's a book and it's popular, let's just adapt that into a TV show because we already know it's popular and it has a fan base that's already dedicated to it. You don't have a Lost scenario where the fan base of Lost is who you are trying to uh, steer the show toward.
Uh,
Um, One example that comes to mind, though, is what you mentioned before, Joe, The Witcher.
yes.
What's interesting about The Witcher is that the first season is an kind of a loose adaptation of the first two short story anthologies. Some of the later short stories get pushed off into season two, but the first season is like a best of with all of the main works of the short stories,
Mhm.
with some plot elements from the first book being wrapped up into it, so that it goes naturally into whatever the first main book is. I can never remember what those books are titled. where Geralt meets Ciri.
Mhm.
But that's where the first book kind of begins. Uh, but that first season merges a lot of different plot lines together, where the author was getting a hang of not just like the character and the writing style, but also where he wanted to go with the series. And it kind of presents them all as one solid narrative. Um, it also plays around with timeline, which is something that as an anthology, like you're reading stories about one centralized character. It doesn't really matter what timeline they're in. It just matters that they are like, that there's a logic to it.
Mhm.
The twist of The Witcher season one, which sorry for anyone who hasn't watched it, but at this point I don't think you really should. Um, the twist is that all of the stories for all the characters are happening in a non-linear fashion. So like Geralt's story is happening way in the past. Ciri's story is happening way like kind of toward like the present timeline. And they all blend together at the very end in this way that's just that pays off so well. Because you can see where the timelines are like, oh, this shouldn't be happening like this, and this is weird how this is happening, and it comes together and makes a lot of sense. Um, so that first season of The Witcher is a fantastic adaptation of the first two short story novels. And more than that, they also took uh, elements from the video game sequels, which were not written by the original author. Particularly, Henry Cavill based his performance of Geralt on the video game version of that character, like the way he talks and his personality and stuff, and like how smarmy he is. And I think all of that had the benefit of hindsight. So that's a great adaptation, but is it still a good adaptation if, as soon as the first season ended, it all went immediately downhill? It doesn't have the same value to watch it if it turns into schlock like instantly.
Okay. It's an interesting question. The What I would say is that entertainment has value, however you ingest it. And obviously, we come in here on a monthly basis and, talk about our opinions and often state our opinions as if they're simply fact.
Right.
But other people have different ideas about the stuff that we talk about. Well, and of course, even amongst the three of us, we have differences of opinions, uh, at least one of which I'm specifically not going to mention right now. The but it's an interesting premise though, Chris, because the even the first season is not is not a perfect adaptation of the source material. There's things that were secrets in the show that were public knowledge in the book, and vice versa. Relationships are changed, characters are added and changed. Um, yeah, there's a lot of stuff. So that being said, I really like the books and I really like the show, but they're not in any way a, panel for panel duplication. Uh, but speaking to your point, yeah, if you've never read Witcher and you're interested in watching the show, watch it. If you have read Witcher and you're interested in watching the show, well, watch it. You know, if you've never heard of either of them, check out both of them. Uh, Try your local library. You won't even have
Oh
to pay money
yes.
to do it. Um, but yeah, I think that the Witcher show has done a thing that's in sort of in a similar way to well, let's go with the Lord of the Rings movies or the Harry Potter movies, where the first one is the closest to the source material, and then the further they go from that, the more they stray, you know? Um, and it doesn't mean that you can't enjoy them, but you're absolutely going to notice a lot of differences if you consume the visual material and the books.
Well,
They
let
have
me
to
ask you
grow in
as a
their own
question.
ways too. Like that's like organic. If something starts to go in one direction while you're doing like an adaptation or some such, you need to follow that path to its conclusion rather than trying to like jam it back onto the proper path because then it's just awkward.
Well, let me guys ask you guys a question. What do you feel about adaptations where the only thing they take is the main character? And you're going, what are you talking about? I'm talking about basically every DC or Marvel movie ever done. I'm talking about stuff like Robin Hood, King Arthur, um, Sherlock Holmes to some extent, Zorro movies, where basically no one's actually following the script of the books or the graphic novels, but they've captured the essence of the character and they want to go off in that direction. What do you feel about those type of films? Would you consider those adaptations or just
Yeah,
fanfic,
sure.
basically?
Sure. Yeah, you're adapting a thing to another thing. Like it doesn't have to be like you could adapt the story, but you could just be adapting the characters. I consider the movie Annihilation to be so much better than the book that it undoes the need for those books to exist. Although they have to exist because it's, the movie would not have existed without them. It's on such another plane of existence and quality that I think Vandermeer, the author, should probably be grateful that someone was able to uplift his story to such great heights.
And that's an interesting one because obviously Vandermeer was trying to recreate weird fiction, and as and those of you who want to see that there's a playlist on here on Moffat Library of my weird class I did where I have an entire lecture about Annihilation. But one of the things that the filmmaker did was he was able to basically really seize upon the core elements of weird fiction and bring those out in the film when they I won't say they weren't there in the book, but they weren't highlighted like they were in the movie.
Well, not only that, but I think Vandermeer also wasn't able to portray them as well because there is a weird tentacled creature that exists in the sideways lighthouse thing and walks along the wall and traces an outline or something like it's writing some kind of alien language, and if you get near it you die or something. And that's not remotely portrayed with any kind of clarity in the book. Like she mentions it, she calls it like the architect or the librarian or something like that. And it's like what like I get that you're writing it in a first person kind of perspective and you're like the character knows what it is, but I don't know what you're talking about. And that is definitely a weird fiction trope of the unknowable thing that's in a life form that we can't comprehend, but I don't, the movie shows you things and you're like, oh, that's definitely alien and strange. So
Show
yeah,
don't tell is what you're
adaptation
saying.
can be adapting the story. It could just be adapting the characters. It could be adapting the concept. But I think as long as you're taking that base and making something good out of it, I think that makes it an adaptation of any sort.
Oh, let me ask you another question, guys, because this is happening a lot. I'm thinking of things like, well, and unfortunately, Neil Gaiman's been in the news for bad reasons, but the TV show Sandman. I'm also thinking about Robert Kirkman's Invincible, where the writer had been strongly involved with the writing of the adaptation and has been correcting things, or at least consolidating things, correcting things, making small changes here and there to improve upon the work that he had already done. And I think that's a great thing. I mean, I wish I had a better example than Kirkman and Gaiman, but anyway, there we are.
I have one. I actually do have one. there's a post-apocalyptic novel series called Metro 2033, then 34 and 35. I think that's sequentially how they go. They're adapted into a series of first-person video games. Like the novels are Russian. The games I think are developed like in Poland or something. Like they're Eastern European developed. The the author of the books I think if he's not directly involved with the creation of them, he has taken what the game writers have done for those games and then incorporated them into his story. So it's like backwards adapting into something else. And I don't think there's any debate that the games are like I've said about something else just a few minutes ago. They're on such another level of quality that like it seems like the original is more of a blueprint than it is an original work. So for that, like, yeah, of course, especially if the original writer's involved, that means that you can say that there is like a definite intent and a like canon involvement in the changes.
Well, we're running out of time, so maybe we should wrap it up. This has been a weird episode.
A
Yeah,
little bit,
real
but
drippy today.
yeah,
I really hate it. A while ago, I noticed I was just about to sneeze into one of these rags that I've been blowing my nose into, and I was like, oh, everyone on camera thinks that I just smeared it all over my face. So I hope no one's been watching me. But yeah, this is a strange topic. It's one that we've been arguing about movie adaptations for a century now, right? A
I
sure.
think we
very,
can
very long time.
I think we can all agree though that everything is a form of art, and there's good art and there's bad art.
Mhm.
And even if you adapt something, you make changes to it. And the question is, are you making the changes for the better to make better art, or are you making the changes for the worse to make worse art? And I think it can go either way. I think it depends on the skill of the director. People like Kubrick and Spielberg are definitely going to probably improve upon whatever you have. I don't care who you are as an author.
But
Um,
real quick, because you mentioned Kubrick, I need to ask you really quickly, do you think Kubrick made a mistake in not adapting the last chapter in A Clockwork Orange?
God, it's been so long since I read A Clockwork Orange. It's been a good 20,
He
30 years since I've
he
read
grows up and
Clockwork
says,
Orange.
I don't want to do all that stuff anymore, so I'm going to be a functional member of society.
Oh, it's Train Spotting ending. Okay.
Exactly.
I think Train Spotting did it better. How about
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, and I also think that as a movie that has like a single vision to it, I think that whatever the ending is going to be needs to follow logically along the conclusion, and that's fine with me. But anyway, sorry, I just thought about that real quick.
What do we got going for us this month, Joe?
Okay, there's some things happening in May and June. There's actually a lot of things that are happening or starting this Friday, the 16th. The Department of Mass Communication will present screenings of senior documentaries at noon on Friday in the Fane Fine Arts Center. The Juanita Harvey Art Gallery is holding a closing reception for the senior exhibition from 6 to 8 on Friday. Backdoor Theater's fundraising committee is excited to present Music Bingo, a night full of music, laughter, a little friendly competition, all to support Backdoor Theater's youth programs. And that is Friday on their dinner stage with doors opening at 6. And they're going to be doing like Broadway musical and music from the 80s
Yeah, I was
trivia.
about to say, yeah, I got their notice.
Yeah. Um, Also, starting Friday, on the 16th and 17th, you can see the Hansel and Gretel ballet here at the Fane Fine Arts Theater. Throughout the end of the month, on weekends, Wichita Theater is presenting Seussical Kids. The next After Hours Art Walk will be downtown Wichita Falls on June 5th. The second annual Dia del Nino, which is a Zavala Hispanic Culture Initiative event, will be on June 7th at the WFMA. Wichita Falls Museum of Art at MSU, Texas. You can also join the Wichita Falls Museum of Art for a 3-day summer art camp for ages 6 to 11, where students will dive into fun with hands-on art activities over the 3-day event. They're going to create vibrant animal collages, make stunning sun catchers, and design unique foam stamps. But for more information about any of these things that I've mentioned today and other local activities, please check out the events section of the MSU Texas homepage and the calendar at discoverwichitafalls.com/events. And of course, you can always send us a note with questions, comments, or concerns. Just zap us a line at library@msutexas.edu.
Correct me, please. I anticipate it.
It could be fun to see. It,
I'd
it'd
love to do it.
be nice to have that kind of audience engagement.
Yeah, if any of you have a film, if you any of you think that we're completely wrong, or if there's a film that you think is much better than the book, please leave a comment in the comments section.
Yeah, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah. And if you go to any of the events that you're going to because you heard about it here, please tell the people at the event that you heard about it here.
Tell them we sent you.
That's right.
All right, I think that's going to do it for us for this installment. Thank you all for listening. We hope to see you again on our next one.
I